Hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome. I want to talk today about what I call the quiet saboteur, and it's human nature, right? Being needed feels good until it doesn't. Early on in your business, it was the mark of your value. You could do everything. You were the jack of all trades, and you were the only one they counted on. But now, you're still the person every decision, fire, or big idea runs through, and that makes you essential, and it also makes you in the way. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most common and least talked about traps that founders fall into, being so needed that they can't step back. If you're new here, I'm Jen, and this is the Founders Table. We built this space for business owners who are still at the center of their company, but wondering if that's still the right place to be. This group is part professional insight, part support system, and it's where you can say the things you can't always say at your leadership meetings, like, I want to step back, but I don't know how, or I'm tired of being the glue here. If that's you, you're not alone. So, what I see with clients is that at a certain stage, being needed is no longer a strength, it's no longer a flex. It's a sign that something in the business isn't built to last without you. And at last month's, I guess it was this month's because it was just a week ago, at our executive roundtable, this topic came up. And one of the founders that was there was talking about how good it felt to be needed. It was a stroke to his ego. He loved being Superman. And he described carrying a phone booth in his pocket because he so enjoyed being the one to swoop in and save the day. And like we've talked about, that works until it doesn't, until you get tired of being Superman. So we often train the business to depend on us without even realizing it. I think it happens to a lot of us. And today we're going to look at how that happens and how to start rewiring the pattern. And I want you to remember that, as with everything that we talk about, there's these operational skills that we need to develop, but there's also this personal development or personal transition, like Jamie talked about last week, where in order to become the leader that the next phase of his business needed, he had to let go of the Superman. And in his words, he had to become Yoda. So let's talk about 5 ways founders accidentally build around themselves. The first one is the hardest one to get out of, I think, and it's the fact that you're the final filter, even when others are capable of making decisions or giving direction. So I want you to ask yourself, do I keep a hand in everything because I trust them or because it's faster? So do you distrust your team, or is it just faster to work through it or make the decision instead of mentoring them or being Yoda and helping them figure out the solution on their own? Number 2 is people default to your judgment instead of building their own. And there's so much to unpack under this one. But I want you to ask yourself at this point, do I answer too quickly, which I'm completely guilty of? Sometimes I just blurt out the answer before thinking about other things that I could say that would develop that person. Like, I don't know. What do you think? And we talk to our clients about that a lot, just kind of defaulting to that every time someone asks a question. I don't know. What do you think? Because then it sparks a conversation. And 9 times out of 10, whatever they think or whatever their plan is exactly what they need to do. So, do I answer too quickly when I should be coaching them to think? Number 3, you still solve the fires just because you always have. That's always the way it's been done. And I want you to ask yourself, what fire would go unsolved unless I personally stepped in? I want you to just kind of let that sit for a minute and think about the things in your business, whether it's solving a problem or pushing things forward. Are you the only one doing that? And finally, number 5, the team avoids risk because they know you'll fix it. right? So a lot of times team members come to us with baggage from poor leadership in other positions. And rather than take the risk that they do something wrong and get in trouble, so to speak, they don't. They'll default to you whenever possible just to protect themselves, protect their egos. So I need you to ask yourself at this point, have I made failure costly to them as an individual? Because rarely can they do something that can't be fixed, right? Let's be honest. So have I made failure costly as part of the culture I've developed here? Or have I made ownership impossible? Both of those are kind of two sides of the same coin. But if you're going to have others take the ball and run with it, if you're going to have others own responsibilities, tasks, results, more importantly, not just the tasks, but the results, you have to be willing to take a look at these things. Okay? So being needed does feel validating. The phone booth in your pocket, right? That's what Jamie said. But long term, it becomes this weight. For you, energetically, it becomes a weight. But it also reminds me of a ship that's trying to go fast, but they're dragging their anchor. That's what it's like when you're in the middle of everything. The business can't grow. Your team can't rise. And you get to a point where you can't even breathe if everything depends on you. You can still be valuable. Not being depended on doesn't mean that you have any less value. You can still lead, probably better than you had before, but you don't have to be central to everything to make it work. Freedom starts when you stop being needed. And sometimes that's a difficult jump to make on a personal level. So here's what I'd like you to consider this week, on top of the questions that we went through. Where are you still needed out of habit, but not necessity? That's your starting point. Share one example in the group or bring it to next week's Freedom Briefing, because when you stop being the business's safety net, your team starts to stand on its own. That's it. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.